Today we're going to learn how to graph polynomial functions. So you turn your calculator on, then you hit second plus sign, 7, 1, 2. And it should say RAM cleared. That means the memory's been cleared for whatever was left behind from last student. Then you're going to hit the y equals button for graphing, and you're going to put in this equation. In order to put in a negative sign, you're going to use the button next to the decimals way down here at the bottom. That's a negative sign. So negative. And then we're going to type in the number 2. Our variable button is next to the alpha button here, so x. Then the caret is under the word clear, and then we're doing 2x to the third. And then we're going to, this flashing arrow means to arrow over, and then it's minus, so use a minus sign for x raised to the second, arrow over, plus 16x plus 12. Once we have the equation in the calculator, we're going to hit the word graph and watch the graph form. We're going to look at our graph and decide whether the window that's on the graph is clear or not. And if we look at this graph, we can see that the graph goes below the window and above the window for up and down. Side to side, the graph fits. So we're going to adjust our window, the y values, which are the up and down values. So we're going to leave our x values alone, and we're going to adjust our y. So let's go to negative 25 and positive 25, and then regraph. If it still does not fit in your window, you would adjust more. In this case, we can see that we can now see the minimum and maximum points. We can see our shape of our graph. It was a negative cubic function, so we see that the graph is going down, and it's got the cubic function with the opposite end behavior. So we're good with the graph window. So now after we find the window, the next step is to find the zeros. To find the zeros, we're going to hit the second button and then trace. And it brings us to this menu that says calculate, and we can see the word 0 there, so number 2. So you can scroll down to number 2 and hit enter. And then we're going to find our zeros. The first 0 I'm going to identify is the one over here on the left. So it says the left bound. We want to move our cursor to where the left side of that 0 and hit enter. And then we want to go right bound, so to the right side of that 0 and hit enter. And then as you can see, this between the two dashed lines is where my 0 is. It says guess. We're going to hit one more enter. And the 0 is at negative 3.72 approximately. And then the y would be 0 at the 0. So that's the first 0. We have 2 more zeros on our graph, so we're going to do the same process. Second, trace, number 2 for 0. We're going to go to the next 0. We're going to stay on the left side of that 0. Hit enter. Cursor over to where on the right side, enter. Hit enter one more time. That 0 is at negative 0.67 approximately. Again, y would be 0. One more 0, so we're going to second trace. We're going to find the last 0, which is over here. Move our cursor along. Enter. Move to the right side. Enter. One more enter. The 0 is at 2.39 approximately. Y is 0. So that is how we find the zeros of the polynomial function. So the next part we want to find is the max and min. If we look at this graph, we should see that there is a relative minimum point here and a relative maximum point here. So we go back to our second trace, you can see minimum as the option number 3. So pick number 3 and then go to the minimum point and make sure you go somewhere to the left side of it. So we're right over here, enter, and then to the right side, hit enter. It again says guess. If we hit enter one more time, the minimum value is when x is negative 2.43. The lowest the graph goes relatively is negative 21.80. Right? It's going to go to infinity, so there is no absolute minimum, but the relative minimum is at that point. Then if we want to find the max, second trace, we're going to go maximum value, which is number 4. And we're going to go over to the highest relative max, and we're going to stay on the left side and hit enter. Scroll to the right side, hit enter. One more enter for the guess, and the maximum point is when x is 1.097 approximately. The y value, or the height of the graph at that point, is 22.1 approximately. So then that's our maximum value and relative to the graph. So then after we find our maximum mins, the other values we want to be able to locate are the y-intercepts. So where does this graph cross the y-axis? To do that, we hit second, trace again, and now we're going to find a value, so number 1. And the value we want to know is a y-intercept, which is when x is at 0. And hit enter, and it tells you the y-intercept is 12, which matches the equation because we know the constant term of the polynomial function is the y-intercept, and you can see that that is where it crosses. So those are the key points on a graph that we want to be able to identify. Some other features with the graphing calculator lets you do is to actually find the table of values. If you want to find the table of values for